Listening to KBVR Corvallis. It's just a little bit past 3:30 here, almost 3:40 now. And we have a couple students here in the booth today who were with a journalism camp through the Oregonian. We've got Ryan Nguyen and Sagarika Ramachandran, led by Amelia from OPB here. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's been great doing this.
Awesome. How has your time at journalism camp been? Can you explain a little bit what that's been like?
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a mixture of getting to know a lot of people, our students our age, and learning from their background and their expertise in journalism, and also getting inspired from their passion to write and share news. And then we also have gotten to know them personally and grow lifelong friendships. So it's been an amazing experience. That's
fantastic. And what about you, Ryan?
It's comparable to being thrown into the deep end of the pool. I've heard that expression many times, but I truly believe that this immersion with actual real journalists, legitimate journalists, Amelia, you've been great, has been a fantastic experience. And I do think it's a fantastic way to learn journalism. And if anybody is considering doing this, probably not, because this is a college radio, but it's been great. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And how has being on the teaching side of it been for you, Amelia?
Well, I will cop to having been absolutely terrified the first day because I may be a, quote, legitimate journalist, but I'm not an experienced teacher. And so, I am 33 years old, and all of a sudden you're hanging out with all these teenagers and everybody's got their own lingo, and they're all, they all look kind of cool. So once I got over the hurdle of my own fear, it's been so rewarding and so much fun. And I don't think I've ever been part of a group of people that has worked this hard together and that has learned as much as they've learned in this week. It's akin to cramming an entire semester of college coursework into, 6 very intense days.
That was very sweet. Listeners can't see this, but I'm tearing up a little bit.
Oh,
the one-on-one mentorship is something that I don't think you'll get in a classroom or in any other way of really learning journalism. And to have somebody always by your side to make sure you're able to get back up, not exactly like just taking you there, but giving you the steps to know how to get there yourself eventually, is just something that I'll never, ever forget.
That's fantastic. What does all the camp entail? You said 6 days, right? So they really sort of do this accelerated course for you all. What does it all entail?
Well, I can describe the first few days. The first 3 days you get to do some bonding and getting to know everybody else. And then in the classroom, we first learn how to write a lead and a nut graph. So basically the structures of how to write an article. And to get right going, the first night we got to practice interviewing our partners, and I was so lucky to have Ryan as a partner, and
thank you.
And we got to write profiles about each other, and that was what we kind of got started getting right into work the first night.
All right. For the next couple of days, we argued about how to spell nut graph. I personally think it's with an F because that's the way I've been taught. But after that, we were immediately thrown into doing real interviews with real people, which was absolutely terrifying. After our first interview, where I saw Sagarika had ink all over her hands.
The interview was an hour and a half long.
You did fantastic, and I was absolutely terrified of living up to that expectation. Hopefully I did in our second interview.
Absolutely. These students, every group, essentially the mentor, the professional journalist, does a little research before they come to Corvallis and finds a decent story that we can all work on together while we're down here that's a real news story. And so the story that I ended up choosing was about the closure of the men's winter homeless shelter here in Corvallis. And so, Sagarika and Ryan they went from learning how to do an interview on Sunday to learning how to take really good notes on Monday to learning how to ask follow-up questions on Tuesday to actually sitting in a room with people who run a major homeless shelter in Corvallis. And one of the most incredible moments in all of this for me was at the end of that interview, the case manager for that shelter broke down and started crying and
Oh, wow.
talking about all of the people she's known who have died. And, that's part of journalism. It's, you never know what you're going to get. And you often have these just intensely personal moments with people. And there's lots of, ethical complications. And so to watch these two young people in this suddenly very adult situation with, an adult woman sort of telling them these stories and crying as she's doing it, and just how gracefully they handled it. And I mean, these two humans have all of the right instincts when it comes to ethics and when it comes to compassion. And it's just been a real privilege to see them at work.
Well, that's fantastic. Is it ever difficult for you all to go through that kind of process of interviewing someone, getting that kind of emotion, and then translating it to the page? Like, how do you translate someone's story, their own personal story, onto the page?
Personally, I don't think it's not ever difficult as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I always worry about effectively translating their story to the written word in a way that accurately reflects the raw emotion that we get in those interviews. But I have a great mentor here who really helped us out, seriously. And how do you feel?
Well, I mean, yeah, in that moment, I think I was also definitely feeling the emotion that our interviewee was feeling. And right after that, I asked Amelia, like, what do you do in those situations where you are starting to feel emotional yourself? Because you're going to be writing stories from like all walks of life. And so you're going to, empathize and feel that emotion too. And I think her lesson was something I'll really keep to heart. I mean, when you show that you are caring and that you are listening to what they're saying, that will definitely make them feel more comfortable with you. And then, but it's also their moment.
Right.
And that's not something you want to step into. And it's their story that they're trying to tell. It's not like your time. You're the one sharing the story. And I think that throughout this whole process, learning of sharing all sides of the story and not letting our opinions really get into the way, but making sure things are fair and accurate throughout the whole narrative is just something that we've been able to experience and figure out together. And I think that it's definitely going to help me going on in journalism.
Awesome. Throughout this week, you've learned a lot about telling other people's stories, but what about your stories? How did you guys get involved with like wanting to pursue journalism?
Well, at my school, I signed up for a publications class because I took yearbook in 8th grade. And then since then, I really loved the class. I'm working for the newspaper, and I was a design editor of my newspaper. I go to Lincoln High School, and I work for the Cardinal Times. And my teachers there from last year, this year, and even another teacher for the Spanish magazine, they were all telling me, you have to do this camp. You're going to love it. And I signed up and I got in, and I was just, ever since coming here Saturday morning and then meeting everybody, and like basically after our first meal, things just became like the best part of my summer, honestly. It was the best, yeah.
So Sagarika, you've told me a couple times about a story you started to write for the Cardinal Times that you thought was going to be kind of the smaller story about a woman with disabilities at your school or student that just kind of took on a life of its own. And I'm curious, was that experience part of what made you want to do more reporting?
I think so, because in the first year of a journalism class, you're really learning like the basics, and it can be a little tiresome and a little bit boring and stuff. But so this story that Amelia is talking about is that I was going to write a story about the American Disabilities Act and how our school follows the act. And I reached out to a girl who is in a wheelchair, and I went into an interview, and then I came out an hour and a half later learning about her whole life story and realizing that there's like a much bigger narrative to be telling here, and that this girl's story really needs to be told. And so I think that whole process of going back and forth with my teachers and learning how to write such an in-depth and very complicated article, especially when you have a lot of points of views and sides of the story you couldn't always reach out to because she was adopted from another country, and I couldn't reach out to some people. And so I think that was near the end of the year, my freshman year. And so I think since then I knew like that was definitely affirming that I really wanted to do this and share those stories. And I'm so glad I've continued and came to this camp.
Awesome.
How about you, Ryan? What was your gateway into journalism?
Well, you can read more about that in Sagarika's article about me. It's very lovely. But I went to Aloha High School, which is in Beaverton to start off, and I graduated this year. I'm actually going to University of Oregon. Sorry about that.
Awkward.
But I just I did fall into it. And I joined the school newspaper in my sophomore year. But what I didn't know is that it was unofficially defunct. It was dead. And I eventually started taking more of a leadership role in the position. And I started really wondering why it was I did that. I joined because I had a love for writing that I wanted to express. And journalism seemed like a really good way to do that. But as I went into my senior year, I realized that I really liked it. And eventually by graduation, people knew me around school as the newspaper guy, and that's just been great, and I absolutely love it. It's been great at the High School Journalism Institute here.
Fantastic. And how has it been, again, from a more mentorship role and seeing these kids go through this week of journalism camp? What kind of skills do you think are the most important to take away from here as they continue their careers?
I would say, above all else, really knowing how to listen to people closely and how to figure out how to prompt them to be clearer, be more specific, share their experiences. And because, we all have conversations with each other all the time, but a lot of those conversations aren't very revealing. And people are often either afraid to reveal more about themselves, or they have conflicting agendas. And just learning how to listen carefully to what a person is saying, think about what it means on the fly, and figure out what's that little follow-up question you might ask them to get them to go a little deeper. Until this week, I didn't realize how fundamental that is to our profession. The other thing that I have loved teaching them is how to distinguish between opinions and experience, and how to really push sources to share their experience as opposed to their opinions, and how to watch out for red flags that what somebody's telling you might be secondhand information, or might be an exaggeration, or might not be true. Because I think for people outside of journalism, truth is this bright line kind of thing. Like, either people are telling the truth or they're lying. And when you work in this field, you come to understand all of the ways in which people see the world through their own lens, and how we can sort of strip that away. And so, just an example, in the course of working on this story, we interviewed somebody who was very concerned about the impact of homeless people from this shelter on his business. And he had really serious concerns, and he had personal experiences that were disturbing or upsetting, and that we wanted to really reflect in a way. We wanted to reflect the seriousness of his experience and those concerns. And at the same time, at some points in the interview, he generalized to make statements about other businesses and other people. And so in the course of trying to fact check those stories and go to the original sources, we figured out that some of them just didn't turn out to be true, I think through no intentional error on anyone's part. And it's just a really important lesson, because that, even if you don't go on to become a journalist, even if you're just somebody who's reading the newspaper, reporters don't always do that really rigorous fact checking. And it gives you the ability to look at a claim and say, well, is this based on somebody's experience? Is this firsthand? Was this a witness, or is this a secondhand account? And to think more critically about the mess of information that's out there, especially now that we have people flooding the internet with their opinions. It right. gives you the ability to sort of think like, well, how much of this is really something somebody knows for sure versus something they're projecting?
Absolutely. And I think that'll be, like you said, that'll be a really important skill to take forward as you continue to pursue journalism throughout your careers. You're graduating, Ryan, right? And you're
yes,
going to UofO.
I am.
Do you know where you're going?
I have no idea. I'm going to be a junior next year, so I have to start thinking about that. But I'm really open to anything, and as long as I get to do something I love.
Oh, that's awesome. That's such a great opportunity to have at your age. It's something I didn't really know about back in high school. I wasn't really even into journalism in high school until now, because my career path is completely different. But I just think it's great that this opportunity through the Oregonian and you at OPB has helped out you guys, and I think that's super great that you're taking that opportunity, and definitely keep these connections going forward. It's absolutely fantastic. Anything else you'd like to say before we head off the air?
I mean, I guess thank you, Amelia, and I guess all the editors and Molly for doing this. It's an experience I'll never forget, and I've heard from other people who've done the camp at school and from editors who did the camp when they were younger that this is something that you'll remember and cherish for a long time. So I guess thank you for your guidance and your mentorship all throughout this whole week. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
And none of this would have been possible without the support of OSU and the Orange Media Network. So huge thank you to the community here for supporting this camp for so many years.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Yeah, it's been an amazing, life-changing experience here. And I cannot thank you, Amelia, or any of the other editors, or Molly Young, enough for the chance to be here and do all of this. So thank you.
Awesome. Again, you've been listening to KBVR Corvallis. We had a couple students come in, Ryan and Sagarika here from the journalism camp through the Oregonian, and Amelia from OPB. Thank you for your time today. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled hip-hop rotator here provided by our productions director. So stay tuned to KBVR Corvallis.